Well, the stories on transfers are beginning to come in thick and fast now. After a bit of a lull, all of a sudden we're getting a story, two, three stories every day about players who are going to stay, players who are going to leave, and players that we're going to buy. And despite the statement or the suggestion by some West Ham social media channels that both Niels Koppen and Nuno are going to wait and see what they've got in the squad before they start making decisions. I don't believe that to be the case. I think Nuno knows exactly what he needs in the squad, and he knows exactly who he wants to keep and exactly who he wants to let go. And one of those players that is imminently going to leave is Edson Alvarez. He's returned to West Ham, or he's due to, because the players with World Cup duty have extended have an extended sort of break. But the idea is that Edson Alvarez, after his efforts in the World Cup for Mexico, won't be coming back to West Ham, but he'll be going back out on loan. And the reports are suggesting that FC Koln have reached an agreement in principle with West Ham over a season-long loan, with the remaining discussions centered around the player's financial package. Now, Alvarez still has 2 years left on his contract at West Ham United. And to be honest, I don't think it looks as if he'll be kicking a ball for West Ham again in those 2 years. Now, on the face of it, it's just another transfer story. But actually, I think there's a bigger story developing here, because the man helping shape FC Kolon's squad is someone who West Ham fans know really well, or reasonably well, Tim Steidten. The same Tim Steidten who played a key role in bringing Edson Alvarez to West Ham in the first place. And whilst Steidten appears to be trying to take Alvarez to Germany, West Ham's new recruitment chief, Niels Koppen, is being linked to one of FC Kolon's most exciting young midfielders, Isak Johansson. So today, I want to look at both sides of the story. Why does Steidten believe in Alvarez, given it wasn't exactly a successful career at West Ham? And why would this move be sensible for West Ham? And could Johansson be exactly the sort of player that Niels Koppen wants to build his new midfield around? Before I go into all that, if you're new to the channel, or if you've watched the West Ham Voice before, forgive me for repeating myself. A QR code has appeared in that top corner there. If you enjoy the content, why not become a subscriber of the channel? Click on that link, takes you to the subscription page, costs nothing to subscribe. Anyway, when West Ham signed Alvarez, Steidten, as I've said, was heavily involved in identifying and recruiting him. I don't know. You could put it down to Mark Noble. You could put it down to Steidten. It was Steidten who certainly got the deal over the line. Look, in his first season at the club, there were glimpses that perhaps we had found a really decent replacement for the departed Declan Rice. But that feeling kind of didn't last long. Alvarez showed glimpses of what he's capable of, but he kind of loves a yellow card or two, doesn't he? And when Graham Potter was planning his squad for the 25-26 season, he never appeared convinced that Alvarez fitted the style of play that he wanted the team to have. There were also rumours, of course, behind the scenes that Potter wanted to move players on who were deemed to be disruptive to the squad. Unfortunately, what Potter did was he eventually got rid of all the leaders in the squad, and we found ourselves a bit lost when it came to having any commanding players on the pitch. Rather than becoming the cornerstone of the West Ham team, Alvarez found himself on the fringes before eventually being loaned out to Turkish club Fenerbahce. Now, that spell in Turkey never really got going. His performances were a little bit inconsistent, but most importantly, he suffered a long-term injury that really robbed him of any rhythm or confidence. But then came the World Cup, representing Mexico once again. Alvarez was fit enough to go out with Mexico to this World Cup, and he reminded everybody why he'd been one of the country's most trusted midfielders and their captain to boot. He looked sharper, he looked fitter, kind of looked a little bit more aggressive, And then suddenly, because of the cameo performances that he put in the World Cup, clubs started to take notice again. Perhaps none more so than Tim Steidten at FC Cologne. Steidten clearly seems to believe that Alvarez can offer the German team something different. Now, what about West Ham, though? If Steidten believes that Alvarez is good for FC Cologne, why not West Ham? Look, we've got to look at it from our perspective. Following relegation, the club's financial wage structure is changing dramatically. You hear about many of the players having their wages cut in half. Now, like many of the senior players, Alvarez is expected to take a significant drop in salary. So he's going to be on around £40,000 a week. Now, in Premier League terms, that's quite modest. But for a championship club and for a Bundesliga club, it's certainly for a Bundesliga club, it's achievable. But for a championship club, perhaps it's still a bit too much for us to pay for a player's wages. Look, if FC Cologne cover his wages in full on this one-year loan deal, West Ham remove another substantial salary from the books. And that matters for West Ham because every pound that we save can be reinvested elsewhere. Look, over the course of a season, that's more than 2 million quid in wages that can be freed up. In the Championship, that kind of flexible financial flexibility can make a big difference. If someone like Johansson joins, I don't think he'd be on 40 grand a week. He'd probably be offered a little bit less than that. So it's not just about reducing the cost. It's about creating room to strengthen the squad. But should we be letting him go? Despite Alvarez's propensity for picking up a yellow and a red card every now and again, more often than not, he still has the presence on the pitch that many fans wouldn't have kind of minded to have in our midfield for the upcoming championship campaign. Experienced players can often make the difference. And there's certainly an argument that West Ham should be keeping him around. Even if he wasn't a guaranteed starter, he'd certainly have value. But if Nuno doesn't see Alvarez fitting his style of football, then keeping him simply because he's experienced kind of is difficult to justify. So while FC Cologne appear interested in Alvarez, as I've said, reports are linking West Ham with one of Cologne's own midfielders, Isak Johansson. Now, I don't know if there's really a swap deal in the offing, to be quite honest with you. There's no indication of that. We're going to loan out Alvarez to FC Cologne. We're looking to buy Johansson to West Ham. But could discussions between the two clubs naturally open the door for West Ham to inquire about Johansson? Absolutely. Don't see why not, if there's definitely an interest in the player. Now, look, I'm not going to lie. I don't know too much about Johansson, to be honest with you. And I think that's going to be the way it goes in the transfer window this summer, because there's going to be an awful lot of players that Niels Koppen will identify that none of us would have heard of. But he's probably not a household name to English supporters, but he certainly fits the sort of recruitment profile that I've been talking about ever since Niels Koppen arrived. Now, I know there's a story in The Athletic that says Koppen has yet to start his role at West Ham. No, know about that, because it was on the official West Ham website that Niels Koppen had arrived. So I don't get the confusion there. But anyway, Johansson certainly fits the profile that Koppen would be looking for. 23 years of age. Despite that, he's sort of already built a considerable experience in the league that he plays in. And he's also an established Icelandic international. He was not, as I've said, not very well known across the board. Now, interestingly, he was born in England, while his father, Joey Gudjonsson, was playing here before enjoying spells at Leicester and Burnley. So if we bought him, he'd be classed as a domestic player. He's primarily a central midfielder, exceptionally versatile, can play as a number 8, can play a lot deeper. He can push further forward when required, technically comfortable on the ball, carries the ball really well, and he's the sort of player that will link defence with attack. He's not an Edson Alvarez type player. He's not like a central defensive destroyer. But does he fit the model of recruitment that Koppen's looking for? Well, Remember what we know about Koppen's style of recruitment. He likes players who are young enough to improve, who are technically sound, athletic, versatile, comfortable in possession, and importantly, players whose value can increase over time. Johansson ticks virtually every one of those boxes. You know, the fact that he's an international and only 23 and no big clubs have been coming in for him just as yet seems to signify he'd certainly be a Koppen style recruitment. Um, and he's still approaching his best years. And that kind of feels exactly the sort of player Koppen would identify. But what about Nuno? Would it work for him? Well, perhaps it would. Nuno goes for energetic footballers. He wants midfielders who can press, who can recover possession quickly, who can transition between defence and attack, and players who can run all day. Johansson appears to fit that profile extremely well as well. So he's not a luxury player, but he is someone that's prepared to do the hard work without the ball whilst contributing when he has it. Those are exactly the types of midfielders that championship winning teams need to build around. And perhaps this tells us something much bigger about West Ham's rebuild. And I've mentioned this before. Whilst Steidten seems to be looking backward and going for a player who's 28 years of age, kind of like tried and tested, Koppen is appearing to look forward, searching for younger players with development potential and good resale value, but can also deliver the here and now. Now, look, neither approach is wrong. I've said before, sometimes you're going to need your experienced players in a team, but they're just different approaches. If this Alvarez deal goes through, I think it benefits everyone. Alvarez gets another chance to establish himself in the German league, in football. There's a lot of interest in Alvarez in the German league. So that could be from Cologne. Who knows what could happen if he has a good season there. And then Tim Steidten reunites with a player that he clearly believes in. And West Ham will significantly reduce the wage bill without having to subsidise the move, something that we've done over and over again. How many times have we heard that we're loaning a player out and then we end up paying 50% of his wages? And those savings, as I've said, can be reinvested in the type of younger player, like the types of players Niels Koppen wants at West Ham. Look, whether Johansson becomes one of the players remains to be seen. But if these reports are accurate, then this feels like exactly the sort of signing that would fit the new recruitment strategy. So what do you think? Do you think we should keep Alvarez? Do you think he can actually do a job in the Championship to get us back into the Premier League? Or is this the right time to cut ties with him and continue or start the rebuild under Niels Koppen? And what about Johansson? Does he sound like the kind of midfielder you'd like to see wearing West Ham shirt next season? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit the like button that's below there somewhere. Subscribe to the channel by hitting that QR code. Hit the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. And also hit the hype button, which promotes this video to other viewers on YouTube. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon to talk all about Callum Wilson, because there's a twist on that as well. Thanks for watching and listening, and I'll see you soon.